it's what you do. This is an example of what you do, but you've done it so many times in so many ways. And we get a lot of joy out of that.
We do like scuba diving with you.
Yes.
The fishies are very nice.
Fishies are not transphobic.
Well, you've always
No.
loved water.
They're actually trans.
They're trans. That's
a lot of
right.
them are
Yeah.
trans. Yeah.
Even in trans colors.
Bailar family, take one.
Well, the first time I came out to you, I came out as gay, as like a gay woman, and I remember feeling. I don't know if I had an expectation of what it was going to go like. I don't think that I was nervous that you wouldn't accept me. I think I was more just like scared to talk about sexuality in general, because I don't think that was a conversation we frequently had as like a family. And I also think that I specifically was like athlete and student and nothing else. Like I think those both consumed my brain space and how I also thought I was perceived. So to even share that I was gay meant that I was like a sexual or romantic human, and that was I think what was scary for me to talk about. The day I decided to tell you both was I had a dream about coming out. I woke up and I had this like pit of my stomach, like, oh my God, today's the day I have to say something. I have to like tell somebody. But you went to New York that morning. You were going on a trip and I forgot. So I like woke up, and I think I woke up too late, and you had already like left for your trip because it wasn't like a big deal. You were just gone for a couple of days. But I was like, I still have to do it. Like this still has to be the day. So I called you and I told you. And it's funny because as I'm like the whole metaphor of coming out of a closet, like I told you from my closet. Like I went into my closet because I think I needed to be contained to have the conversation, so I like shoved myself into the corner of my closet to call you. It probably was also because I didn't want you to hear, Dad, because I wanted to tell you, not by you listening to my phone call. And I think, Mom, your response was quite simple and just like, cool, I don't care who you bring home. And I don't think you had a lot to say. Not in a bad way, it just wasn't a long conversation. And then Dad, I told you on the way to swim practice, because it took me from that conversation, I think, to recover until the afternoon. Then we were in the car, and I think I waited. Oh, it's like the ride to swim practice was only like 5 minutes long. It was Langley, like the closest pool possible. And I told you as soon as we were like almost there, I think I said something like, Dad, I also need to let you know I'm gay. And then you were kind of like, oh, or maybe we're in the garage. I can't
You're in the
remember.
garage.
We're in the garage.
I
Okay.
remember in the garage, you stopped me at the bottom of the stairs. You turned back as the door was opening. You said, oh, I have something to tell you. I was like, oh, right now? I'm about to fall on you because the stairs are in front of me. And you said, I just want to let you know that I'm gay.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. It was kind of a really random moment. Your response, I think, was something like, when did you decide that? I don't think you meant the word decide. I think you meant, when did you decide to like tell me this?
Yeah.
Because it didn't probably seem like much of a decision. I was like just saying it.
Yeah.
And then I went to swim practice, and there wasn't really much conversation beyond that. But then when I came out again, that was in 2012, I think. 2012 or 2013. I feel like that was much more complicated.
When you came out trans.
As trans, yeah, coming out as trans. But I also, I mean, it was complicated and it wasn't. I think both of your responses were very similar in sort of a very loving and welcoming way. I think the complication was on my end of, this means so much more in the world. I think coming out as gay felt more or less simple. You know, this is just, I'm letting you know that one day I will probably bring home a woman and not a man. And that didn't feel like it changed my life. Whereas coming out as trans changed a lot in my life, and largely you could say that it completely changed the trajectory of my life, even in what career I have today. So I think there's a lot more fear on my end. My expectation, or my thought, was you probably had a lot of fear too. I think one of the things that also I struggled with as I came out and found myself and shared myself with both of you was trying to find the right words. And I think the maybe the franticness of saying that I'm gay was also just trying to share something that felt like it was correct, and find a word that felt I could articulate what I was feeling. But what I was trying to articulate wasn't actually, I think, a lot about my attraction or who I was going to marry or who I was going to fall in love with. But I was trying to find a way to describe myself. And at the time, gay felt like the closest thing I could find, because I knew that I was attracted to women and people called me a girl. And so this word that we have is gay. But I think it took me a lot of time and mental health treatment and therapy to find a better word for myself, which doesn't preclude who I'm attracted to, but is a different identity, which is who I actually am, which is a man and not a woman. And I think I had a lot of feelings about what that also meant to share with both of you in terms of having been considered your daughter or my brother's sister, or supposed to be a woman, supposed to be a mother. I think there was a lot more disappointment than I imagined that people could experience around me, including my own disappointment of not living the life I thought I was supposed to live, or that I had planned to live as a woman. So I think that coming out as trans had a really different weight than coming out as gay. One felt like I was just telling you who I might love, or excising 50% of the population and saying this other group is who I probably love. But the other one says I'm actually going to be seen differently in the world, and I'm going to walk the world in a really different way, and perhaps not be the kid you thought I was going to be. I think a lot of people have different reasons that they come out when they come out, but I think for me, there wasn't anything in specific that you both did that said this is the right moment, or this is going to be okay. It's interesting because I think of all the things I worried about, I worried the least about both of your reactions, which I think is makes me emotional, because I think I feel very lucky to have that. And I think, like, when asked to reflect on my experience with both of you and sharing my trans identity, there was very few moments where I thought to myself, if any, I can't remember a moment actually, where I thought they're not going to love me. I didn't have that feeling. And I think that's a testament to the way that you have shown your love over my lifetime. I worried you would have worries, which I think is true. But I didn't ever worry that you would throw me out of the house or cut me off, or say that you didn't love me because of who I am. So it didn't feel like I needed to wait for the perfect time. I think the only reason it took me the time that it did was because I was figuring out what I needed to say, and I was figuring out how to find the right words. Yeah. What allowed you to create the container that made me feel safe? What are the things that you did?
I grew up in a very traditional immigrant Korean Catholic family, which Schuyler talks to often. There was a lot of judgment in other kinds of lifestyles. Sex was never discussed. So having a non-heterosexual person in the family would be the same as committing some mortal sin. I actually didn't know what gay was until I got to college.
So I didn't know what the word gay meant.
I didn't know what the word gay meant. I didn't know what homosexuality was. All that to say, I was very, very naive about other sexualities, other gender identities. I knew nothing of it, which was probably good because I didn't have the preconceptions of judgment, I guess. And so people are who they are. They love who they are. It was good to start with a blank slate because then it was filled with whatever my life experiences were in meeting different people.
But was Harmony actively homophobic when you were a kid? Did she say specific things about people?
She probably did, but it didn't register that's what she was talking about. Because later she certainly would make more direct comments, like if there was, a gay couple on screen or something like that. It's like, I know.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. That's so wrong. That's so, what a sin, etc. But I never knew any gay people growing up that I knew them to be gay. I could have met gay people. I probably did.
Right.
But I knew no one. I perceived no one that was in the queer community.
Mm. When I was a kid, did Harmony make homophobic comments about me and my friends at all? Because I was pretty gender ambiguous as a kid. I know she had a lot to say about how I looked. She was always gently or not so gently encouraging me to look differently because I was very boyish and I acted very boyish and I had boy haircuts, and I'm sure she criticized. Well, I'm not sure. I'm asking, I guess. My guess is she criticized you about those.
Yes. I wasn't raising you properly.
Mm.
I got a lot of that. But I also didn't act properly in her eyes either. I just kind of sloughed it off. She was always telling me I didn't dress correctly. I didn't do the makeup. For 50, 60 years, she's been trying to get me to wear makeup. Every gift-giving season, it's like, oh, try this, try that. Why don't you wear this? So it passed on to, your child is not growing up properly because you're not setting the right example. So there was always the dichotomy of, oh, you're such a perfect daughter, with, oh, are you really going to wear that?
I mean, I would have to say now, in the bucket of people you know who are over 70 and come from a background of strict religion and immigrant kind of challenges, I wouldn't put Harmony in the bucket of, boy, she's one to worry about.
No, I mean, she has had quite her own arc as well. I mean, from what she used to tell you when you were a kid to even how she treated me when I was a kid to how she is now. I mean, she's a Catholic woman, and I told her that I went to go to the Women's March, and I was actually nervous to tell her about the Women's March because the Women's March was all about reproductive justice, and I actually didn't know where she stood on reproductive rights. And I talked to her about what I said at the Women's March, and she was like, "Oh, all of these laws are so terrible." Like, she was like so positive about not only my work but also the cause.
On the one hand, she cares a lot about what other people think, but she will become a rabid protector if anyone messes with someone in her family. And it doesn't matter if she thinks they're wrong or right. To the outside world, she will protect that person. She might take you home and give you a talking to and say, why are you like this? But to the outside world, it's like, do not touch my child, do not touch my grandchild, don't touch anyone in my family. So she is very protective that way. I think a lot of Korean mothers tend to be like that.
Well, I think she's a really good example of complexity and nuance. Like, I think there's a lot there. I think when we call people conservative, sometimes it condemns them to this box of always being conservative and also always being conservative in a specific way. And I think people don't fit those boxes, and Harmony definitely defies lots of them, and has changed over her lifetime a lot, I think, as well. Because I think the prime example that we always talk about is when I actually came out to her and she was like, sure, fine, whatever, moving on. Like, her response was so loving and so easy. It was like the shortest conversation of any of my coming outs, it felt. And she just kind of moved on. And that was so unexpected by all of us. We were all expecting a completely different response from her. And I think she gave us, truly, of all the potential options, she gave us the least expected option, which was only love and acceptance.
I think Harbaji is also a very important, quiet, behind the scenes influencer, because he is the one that actually sees the news. He reads the news. He clips the news. He gives us all pieces of paper of the news, and he says, this is something I thought you might be interested in.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that he's also quietly behind the scenes with Harmony.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a change that is important. And he's always been, in at least since these discussions happened, he's always said, oh, I think I need to clip this article about trans health, or this article about gay, movements, and I'm sure that's helped Harmony move through her journey.
Yeah.
Because I think he's the academic and kind of back behind the scenes, but he's also very much reading everything. And
yeah, I know, he's always giving me little clippings of newspapers of things.
Yeah. So they stay involved that way.
But I also think it works because Harmony does love. Like, I think she loves deeply, and like you said, will protect anybody in her family. I think, like, it's like maybe a perfect pair in that way of Harbaji finding the things that we need to know to be able to understand the people we love, and then Harmony taking that as, okay, here's more fuel for why I should love. Because when I talked to her about what's happening in the country, and I talked to her at all about the work that I'm doing, I've like kind of expected, I shouldn't share too many details, or I don't really need to talk about this in depth. But she really does want to know. And when I explained to her what's happening in terms of the attacks on the trans community or the queer community, she's always horrified. She's always like, that's terrible, that's horrible, why are they doing that, they being the government. And I think that's not a response I would have expected from her, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. But I think it comes from a place of really caring and then being informed by the people around her.
I think it's also having a real person that you are reflecting all that hate off of and saying, wait, this is somebody I know and whom I've helped raise and whom I love deeply. And they're not all these things. They're not all this propaganda that is being thrown out by whomever, whether it be a religious organization or a government political organization or somebody else. I mean, that she processes that. And we all, I mean, I shouldn't say she, but anybody who interacts with you says, but I know him. That's just not true. And so I think that's, that's partially to say who you are is a very important piece of that.
I mean, I think coming out is a really difficult experience for anybody, no matter how much love they are met with, because I had a lot of acceptance from both of you. I think, Mom, you wanted me to think really critically about what I was going to do with swimming. That's one of the main things I remember talking about. Dad, you were just wanting me, and Mom, you too, just wanting me to feel loved, but also consider how I was going to move through my future. And I think that's really what I was focused on, was what am I going to do about swimming? That was the number one biggest question, was how will I move through swimming? And then also, how will I sort of care for myself in terms of, now that I know that I'm trans and I know that these are ways that I could then feel better in my body and in myself, these are steps I want to take, for example, getting top surgery or taking testosterone. I think there was so much that I was processing at the time. I was trying to keep you in the loop about what I was going through, but I also was on my own journey, and you were on your journey, I think, as well. I think what I remember a lot of pieces of surprise coming up. And what I mean by that is, I think there were moments where you were sort of recontextualizing my past and recontextualizing my history, of understanding, wait, this isn't brand new. This isn't just happened. Like, where are the seeds for this identity? But I think for me, I knew I also needed to take the steps on my own to some degree. And I think there were moments that were really difficult for us, because Dad, I remember, for example, you having a lot of difficulty understanding why I needed to have top surgery and why I needed to have it soon. And I think that I remember that conversation being painful for me, because I felt misunderstood, but also knowing that I didn't need you to understand. I just needed to be supported. And that was a conversation that we had. And I also know that you had a lot of other things in your ear. Like, for example, the medical community at the time was telling you to wait, was telling you not to listen to me.
Yeah, I mean, we fumbled through it. You were very good helping us, teaching us, holding our hands. And we tried to be there.
We took your lead.
We took a leave.
No, we took. Well, we probably did
You
that too.
took my lead, yes.
We tried to take your
Follow
lead
his
as
lead.
much as possible.
You did. I mean, there were also a lot of other things that were happening at that point. I think, it's hard to tell this story without adding so many different details of complexity, because I was also just leaving this residential treatment center for my eating disorder, and was trying to reestablish myself in the world as a person, not even just as a trans person or as a man or whoever. No identities involved. I was just trying to live in the world again. And I think that was a task in and of itself. I was learning to set boundaries that would help me be able to do that in a just a survival sense. And then I was also trying to figure out, okay, now that I've learned all of these skills to take care of myself, one of those things I need to take care of myself with is transition, right? And is finding the way to take care of myself in my gender. But I think that there was just a lot. And I think that's important for, I don't know, for anybody who's listening to
And
this
we were
now.
living in two cities.
Yeah, and you were living
Just
in two different
quite
cities, and I was trying to also figure out how I was going to go to school. We were I moved probably 2 or 3 times that year, so
Yep.
I think there was also.
You hadn't swum in a while.
I haven't swum in a while. I was trying to figure out how to swim again.
Yep.
Lots going on that
That
year.
was very, very complicated. And then the press found out, and that became even more complicated.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing that I ended
Yeah.
up stepping in on,
Yeah.
is that we suddenly had press calling and trying to figure out, who is this person, and can we write an article, can we do them on
Yeah.
TV, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, that's going to be an issue. Telling people your story or telling people about coming out became more than just telling people.
Yeah, yeah. That first year also, that first summer, I did an interview. I think it was May, and then that was the start of the articles.
Yeah.
Because from Swimming World magazine, that got posted, and then from there we were reached out to by all of the main press, and we
Yep.
decided to do an exclusive with 60 Minutes.
Daddy and I at the time were working on the girls' education project.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had
Right, you had friends who did
really
it.
good contacts in documentary and in TV journalism who were able to really direct us toward how to best let you tell your story instead of someone else
telling it for
telling it for you.
Or showing your story.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that was really, really important, helpful advice. And it also shielded you a lot because, wow, the media frenzy was really quite insane for a while.
And even with the curated exclusive, there were mistakes and there were issues. And so it was, one could only estimate what would have happened had you had others that were not curated and helped.
Yeah. I think when I was in college, it felt like advocating was really, really important to me, but I also wouldn't have called it advocating. And we've had this conversation before, but for me, telling my story was exactly that. I was telling a story and I was telling people about my story. And sometimes that included advice that I had when people asked me questions, but I was no expert. I was no, be all end all of everything. And people asked me my opinion about something and I would share my thoughts. And I think that became that became the work I do now, but it wasn't, I don't think I intended for it to be this type of advocacy until I realized that's what it was. And then I stepped into it with a different type of responsibility. But for college, I don't think if you had asked me most of college if I would have identified myself as an advocate so much as a storyteller or as an educator or really just as a sharer of my experiences in hopes of allowing others to also have similar experiences of being themselves.
I think the thing that is one of your sparks deep inside of your being is the ability for you to grab onto agency. And I think anyone who tries to be an advocate without already having grounded their agency is probably flailing. The first thing you did was grab your agency, and the agency to go to the eating disorder center, the agency to go and continue the fight to be a swimmer, the agency to stay on the swim team, which crossed over into advocacy for others without even you knowing it. That was courage. That was different. People look to people that have the ability to bring up that agency. And by so doing, suddenly they become an advocate, because just that bit of being able to embrace your own agency and then do it in a way that's public and kind of vulnerable becomes advocacy. And that's what you've done really. I mean, that's what I'm most proud of.
I mean, when I hear you reflect back what you're proud of in terms of what I've done, I do feel pride. And I have always a conflicted relationship with progress, I think, because I can see that when I give a speech or when I talk to somebody one-on-one or have these conversations with people, I can see shifts. Like I can see there's an impact of the work that I or we, whatever group I'm in, is doing. And I have this like deep-seated feeling of it's not enough. Like it's not enough because right now it isn't enough. It isn't enough for me to do this work. We need more people to do the work. We need more people to be engaged. And I think that's my hope, is that agency is contagious, that we can continue to share it out. And at the same time, the people I think who need it the most aren't always showing up at the table, because some of the people who need actually to feel more agency are people who are against me. Like I think sometimes people are hateful because they feel they don't have agency. So there's a lot of complexity, I think, that I feel with my relationship with advocacy, because I both feel purposeful and also effective in many ways. And I also, especially in recent years, have felt a lot of hopelessness in moments, because I think there's a lot of really hard things happening in the country that directly affect me and my life and my community, and trans people and people of color and immigrants and so on. And it feels like, I can see the progress in one room, but then I leave that room and there's a whole world to change as well.
There's two kind of recent joys that we've had with you. One is the time we spend together. We just love you and your wife, and time that we do, whether we're going on a trip and seeing sights, or whether we're scuba diving, or whether we're cooking, or, it's a really important part of our life, is just spending time together as a family or as, people. And watching stuff that you do and being a little part of some of the stuff that you do. I mean, your recent retreat is just phenomenal. And there's just thinking to do it is a miracle. Like to put together all the work, to have a group of people go to a place and have the support of you, and then a week of workshops, etc. To think of putting something like that together But then to listen to the clips of people's reactions and the things they're already changing in their life, and that they change down there, and that their, fundamental view of themselves is just shifted. It's what you do. This is an example of what you do, but you've done it so many times in so many ways. And we get a lot of joy out of that.
We do like scuba diving with you.
Yes.
The fishies are very nice.
Fishies are not transphobic.
Well, you've always
No.
loved water.
They're actually trans.
They're trans. That's
a lot of them
right.
are
Yeah.
trans, yeah.
Even in trans colors.
One of the things that I value the most about our family is the ability to love and to grow in that love. I think that I spend a lot of time with other families, either coaching them, witnessing them in my speeches, hearing about people's families, because I'm talking to the kid and I'm listening to the family in the background of the kid's mind, whether the kid is 5 or the kid is 50. And a lot of families experience a lot of stagnation. This is how it is. This is how it's always been. This is how it's always going to be. And I'm sure I know we have our stuck points, of course, but I think that we as a family have valued updating and continuing to update. While love is still the primary guiding wire, I think we've allowed ourselves to update while also maintaining certain traditions and certain connections to history and family and culture. And I think both of those in conjunction is really important to me. I think especially as a mixed race person, because I've often feared that I'm not enough of anything as somebody who's mixed. The world can reflect that back to me, and has repeatedly, but I think in the way that our family has collected around both my identity as a queer trans person, but also my identity as a mixed race Korean American person, I've found that we've been able to both hold to tradition and to be connected through food and language and Korean culture, as well as allow me the space to be more than maybe what certain historical cultures of Catholicism, for example, would say that I could be. And I feel like we do that as a family, and my hope is to continue to do that. And I also think it's something that we can leave behind as a legacy, that tradition can be important, but how we update and how we continue to love is perhaps more important.
Everything he said.
Well, we're thankful for your patience. And we're thankful for when you listen sometimes. Both sides. But I think one of the most unique things we're thankful for, that we often talk about, especially with other parents and sometimes with other kids, is your inviting us in. Because so many kids and so many parents have this clash in their ability, or I don't know what it is, but ability is the best word I can use, to invite each other in both ways.
Mm-hmm.
And you lead with that. That's another thing you lead with. You invite people in. Maybe they don't want to be invited in sometimes, but you lead with, I'm going to invite you into my conversation and my experience, and I need your advice, or I need your love, or I need your support, or I need your whatever. I think more people need to do that more often. It's hard because it's a vulnerability, and you've taught us a bit about vulnerability there.
I was going to say something similar. I think that you're saying that I invite people in, but in order to feel safe inviting people in, I have to have had a container to feel safe to do that from. And I think that many of the ways in which you raised me gave me a grounding in myself that said I'm enough. If the world says I'm not Korean, if the world says I'm not girl, or too boy or not boy, or too this or too that, I think at home I was never too much of myself. And I've met a lot of parents, I've met a lot of kids who didn't have that, who in some part of themselves they weren't enough, and in some part of their core identity they weren't enough. And I have never felt that from both of you, and I think that is really hard actually to create for a kid, because of all the different ways that the world teaches us to be. And I think especially the many complexities of my identity, I think it would have been easy to have some part of it fall behind. But I think in so many ways, you all taught me to invite myself into myself. And that is why I'm able to do that with anybody else.
We did something good.